Welcome everybody. This is Chris Miles here. Excited to be able to help you understand how you can get paid even while you're on vacation. That power of passive income and how you can actually earn that. Definitely, as you guys are coming in, I know you're coming from different sources, whether it's through YouTube or Facebook or wherever it might be. Definitely go ahead and type in where you're from. Let us know that you're here. I can see that several of you are on immediately, so that's awesome to see. For those of you that are actually watching this later, if you're watching the recording, whether you're watching it for the second time because you wanted to see it again, which I know many of you will, or if you're watching it for the first time, welcome as well. You can type in the chat as well or the comments, but just so you know, I'm not going to be responding live to you. But those of you that are here, definitely welcome. Definitely let shout out to where you're from. We got Victoria here. Definitely glad to see you here as well. And of course, as questions come up, just know that I will have time for questions as well. So I will try to open up some time, even though we got a lot to present, because I know it takes a lot to get you from 0 to 60 or 0 to 60,000, if you really want to make this work. But I'm here to tell you, I promise you that this is going to be some good stuff that I've put a lot of time and intention behind as well. Chris from Nebraska, welcome. Brian from Berlin, Pennsylvania, also welcome to have you. Glad to have you as well. All right, so I'm going to jump in now, guys. I know I won't always see your comments, but I'll try to do my best as we're doing this here. But let me just jump right in here and get going, right? Because that's where you're here. Obviously, we want to know how we can get paid income even while you're on vacation. I know many of you guys, it's the summertime, and maybe you've been like this. Maybe you've been in a situation where, like you're taking vacation with your family this summer, but you know that if you're not working, you're not getting paid. You know that if you're not working, it's costing you. It's not just costing you for the vacation, but it's costing you that money that you could have been making. Now, if you're on salary, it's not that big of a deal, but still, might feel like there's this loss or something that you got to get right back to it. And I used to be in the same place myself, where anytime I took off, I knew that was time I was not making money. Especially if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, you know what this can be like. And so I'll tell you, like, it was always that stressful thing where I'd always say, you know what, kids, hey, we'll go to Disneyland later. When I get to this point, then we'll do this. If we get to this point, then we'll do this. Or maybe we will take vacations. But again, in the back of my mind, even if it's not on the forefront all the time, in the back of my mind, I just knew that I wasn't earning money, right? And that scared me. And I wouldn't share it with my family. I definitely wouldn't share it with my wife because you don't want to freak her out, right? But it definitely scared me. If you guys can relate to what I'm talking about, definitely type that in the chat and say, yes, I've been there before too. Just so make me feel I'm not so lonely here. But Bob from Phoenix, welcome as well. But that's really why I want to address this today, because I know that if you're in that same kind of place where you said, I've been in this place as well. Like I really don't want to have to be stressed out because, if you've ever heard that you've had to sacrifice and save your entire life into 401ks and IRAs, you're supposed to set it and forget it, right? So you're putting all this money into these things, but it doesn't do anything for you here and now. It doesn't actually give you any more freedom to go on vacation. You're told to pay off all your debt and then maybe you can enjoy life. But even then, you're not supposed to enjoy life because once you pay off your debt, you're supposed to just save more, right? Jody, I appreciate saying it all the time. You get that. I know. And then, of course, my favorite is that you're just supposed to do what your financial advisor tells you to do. But if you've been in that place, you've been hearing those things, but something doesn't quite feel right, then this is exactly the masterclass you should be attending, because I'm going to talk to you about how you can do it much faster, how you can do it without needing to sacrifice or work hard, your entire life, only to just have enough to barely get by. And then you don't have to gamble your money in the stock market either. And this is something that my clients and I have already been doing for many, many years. This is actually how I've gotten free, not just once, but twice, become financially free doing this very same things. And so I'm going to reveal that today of how I actually did it. And also, why it's actually easier than you might think. Now, today I'm also going to cover where you can find the money to invest, because that's always a question I get from you guys. So you can save that question for later, because that is coming. Also, what are my favorite investments? Because that's also another question I know you guys asked, is what are those favorite investments you use, Chris? I want to know the secret bullet, magic bullet. I'm just going to tell you there is no magic bullet, but there are definitely strategies you can do that work better. So I'm going to talk about these strategies that a financial advisor doesn't want you to know about. Why? Because they don't get paid if you do it. But the good news is you get paid more because you can do it. And that's something I love. And also what it takes to become financially independent in 10 plus years. Granted, there are people that have done it much faster, even our own clients. Some of you might be that situation too. But I know for even the just typical people that if you've been a good saver and you're just wondering how to make it work, this is something that actually has worked for many, many people and can actually work not in 30, 40 years, if you're lucky. And even then, you're just barely getting by. But something that maybe in 10 plus years you could actually do to have that freedom, where just in a decade or so, you could actually be in a place where you have it. Again, I'm not going to give any investment advice. I'm going to put out all the disclaimers out there. Of course, we are not investment advisors. We're not going to give investment advice. But I do want to educate you and inform you what's possible that a financial advisor would not tell you. All right, so here's the big picture, right? I'm going to cover each of these in order. Principles first. This is something I teach all the time, is that it's not about the strategy, it's about the principles working with the strategies that work together. The problem is that you've been trained and taught for your entire life that one, you can just turn over money to a financial advisor and they'll figure it out. But two, you've been taught things like high risk creates high returns. Well, when did a higher chance of losing become a higher chance of winning? You've been taught things like compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world, and Einstein said it, so it must be true. Although I have yet to find the actual quote where Einstein said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. The only place you can find the source is usually on financial advisors' websites or network marketers' websites. That's all I've found it on, or people just regurgitating it. But it has not been said by Einstein. He did talk about compounding numbers, but nothing about compounding interest and how it related to this. So you hear all these kind of things like that, right? You hear things like you're in it for the long haul. Well, if the market goes down, how long is that long haul going to be? Those kind of things are the things that violate principle. So real principles we'll talk about here today, that education you're getting from this, we're going to talk about that. And it's going to require you to potentially switch how you've been looking at money. Because let's be honest, right? Let's go to, Jerry Seinfeld. Have you ever guys watched the episode of Opposite George, where George gets the answer for one episode, becomes a winner because he starts doing the opposite of everything he's always done, right? He got a different sandwich. He even nailed his best dream job, all because he started doing the opposite of what normal George would do. And that's kind of the same thing with money. If the rest of the world, and I'm talking specifically about like those in America, right? By the way, speaking of, Ryan, welcome from Colorado Springs. If you're across America, the average American, are they really doing well financially? Not really, are they? They are literally living in scarcity, wondering, even if they get to that point of retirement, how can they even make it work? And by the way, will they even be alive for retirement? Right? That's one thing that I think not a lot of people really consider is, what if I'm not even around to enjoy my money? Maybe I'll leave something to my kids, but then they're going to get taxed at the yin yang because you put it in 401ks and IRAs, which are not protected very well when you pass along, especially when it gets passed to you and your spouse. So anyways, that's why I want to talk about those principles, how that ties in with this max ROI infinite banking we discuss here. I'm not going to put a huge focus on this, but that will be a part of the discussion. And then, of course, the passive income investments. How does this all work together to help accelerate you to get there, not just accumulate your money? All right. You guys with me so far? Just say yes if you're still here. If I haven't put you to sleep, definitely put that in the chat. Just so you know, the chat usually takes a minute for me to see it. So by the time you say yes, I'll probably already be 2 slides moved along. All right. So now here's one thing I'm going to promise you, right? There's no BS here. I'm not going to be trying to do like what this meme says, where I'm trying to sell you some ebook, right? Okay, I'm getting the yeses pretty quick. That's good to see. I'm not selling you some ebook. That's not some kind of scam like that, or Amazon store, or anything like the social media says. I took $1,000, turned to $1 million in like 2 days. That's not going to be the case. This is not get rich quick. This is not get rich quick scheme, right? It's not that at all. And this is not even make money while you sleep, where there's streamers that literally get woken up to you pay them to wake them up in the middle of their sleep. That's not what Warren Buffett talked about, right? We're not doing that as well. And this is not even something that's like talking about passive income, but it's going to take you working 12 hours a day, which is what most people do. They're usually selling you some kind of business to get into, which is not anything but passive. These are things that are legitimately, truly passive. Now, this doesn't mean you might be working 0 hours a week, but what if you could only work maybe 1-2 hours a week max? Would that be good? Right. But this is not like how to build that passive income business where they just tell you to put all your money into a side hustle, but you're really just having an overtime job. This is not that. This is truly about how to get your money working for you. We do have a passive income calculator. I know some of you guys already filled this out, but if you haven't done so already, go fill out the passive income calculator to see how much you could actually create in passive income over the next 12 months based on your situation. If you fill it out completely, if you don't, it messes up the numbers and you get a wrong number, right? But this is actually a calculator I created from my own brain, something that I actually would calculate manually for people. Now I actually got into a place that makes it much, much easier. And by the way, I'll just tell you this, if you get at least about 15,000 or more, you definitely need to be talking with our team to see how we can actually help you accomplish that. Okay. But again, this is mostly education focused, But that's something that's definitely a bonus. You could try that calculator for free. Now, so you're aware, like most of these people don't get it. The Dave Ramsey of the world don't get this stuff, even though they've done it. I'll tell you that the things I'm teaching you today is something that Dave Ramsey actually did to help him be worth seriously over $600 million. But he invested not in the stock market like he tells you to. It wasn't from paying off his debt. It was from him, one, investing in his business, two, investing in real estate, which is going to be a lot what we're talking about today. I'll tell you my inspiration today is actually my dad. My dad's one of those guys that worked really, really hard. And maybe you guys have had parents like this too, where they sacrificed, they suffered. My dad was even, a single dad for a while with us kids and trying to make things work while we're growing up. And I'll tell you, man, he was the kind of guy that also was super cheap. He was the guy that Dave Ramsey probably learned from, right? He was the guy that was like, hey, how can I save money? How can I spend my money on a case lot sale so I can get, a year's supply of cereal for a lot cheaper than if I just bought the individual box, right? This guy loved to buy in bulk. If Costco was around a little bit when I was growing up, but that wasn't the place he shopped. He was always looking for the cheap case lots, things on discount. He was the ultra penny pinching saver. And that's all he taught me to do was just save, save, save. But he also taught me things like, hey, we can't afford this. What do you think I am? Made of money? Money doesn't grow on trees, I don't know. Have you guys ever heard those phrases growing up? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Oh, my favorite, there's starving kids in Africa. So eat all the food off your plate, right? So now we got chubby kids as a result of that, that grown up to be adults like me. All these things, right? That we were taught as, with money being a scarce thing, everything being a scarce resource. And Victoria's like, yeah, I get it. And I'll tell you, like, the one thing also when it came to vacations, like summertime, is that we never really travel much beyond what we could drive to in a car on a day trip, right? Now we might spend overnight, we might go camping, and trust me, I had a lot of fun as a kid. But I mean, I wasn't taking like the big trips to Hawaii or anything like that. Heck, I didn't even go to Hawaii until I was 40 years old, guys. That was the first time I went to Hawaii. I've now been back 5 times since. But that was my very first trip. I never went to Hawaii or some of those great places. Never went to Florida. I barely went to California. And I grew up in Oregon, right? So it was like Oregon, Washington, maybe a piece of Idaho, and maybe California if I was lucky. That was pretty much the extent of my travel. And so, although he meant well, he even told me just recently, he's like, Chris, I wish I could do like what you're doing today. Like I couldn't take the time off work. I had to keep working harder and sometimes for less money because they keep squeezing more work out of me, right? They were really treating him like a factory cog, even though he was working kind of somewhere between more like a white collar type of job. And I just, that was not the life for me. And that's actually why I became a financial advisor 22 years ago. Because one, I want to start my own business because I realized that having your own business is a way to create freedom. But two, I figured worst case scenario, I learned about money and maybe I can give my dad some of his life back. So anyways, I did that for 4 years. And then after 4 years, I sat down with my dad and we're looking at his finances. And I said, my dad's like, hey, I'm 61. This is right after Y2K, right? This is 2005. He's like, hey, Chris, what do I need to do? When you become my financial advisor and how can I actually retire now that I'm 61? And I looked at this guy that had saved just like every person been taught. He stuffed his money in 401k, got that free match, right? That dumb free match that you're supposed to get. He did that. He paid off all of his debt, including his house, in 18 years. So he paid off all of his debt early. He did everything that Dave Ramsey taught you to do. And then I had to look him in the eye and say, Dad, here's the deal. If you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's when you're going to run out of money. And that was definitely not the answer he was looking for, if you can imagine. And I said, and he's like, well, what do I do? I said, I don't know. I really don't know, because if I could put you in this, stock thing or this mutual fund or this annuity or whatever, there's no guarantee that you'll even get the returns that we need to get you there. And so, guys, he ended up working into his 70s, right? He ended up having to work into his 70s to try to let his money last a little bit longer. Now, I'll tell you, like a few weeks after that appointment with him, I was reeling. I didn't know what to do. My faith was being shaken in what I taught because he had done all the things I was teaching as financial advisor, but he was living proof that it wasn't working. Even worse, even worse. I talked to a friend just a few days later that I trained to be a financial advisor, but then he left to go do real estate investing. Now, he and his dad was a very different story than mine and my dad. He and his dad, they started doing real estate investing just months prior. And he said, Chris, life is amazing right now. My dad and I have partnered on some real estate deals, and we've doubled his income that he's making as a professor at the local university. I said, come on, that's too good to be true. There's no way that's possible. He said, Chris, Let me ask a question. How many of your clients are truly financially free where they don't worry about money? Well, no, none. They all worry about money. So none of them are free that way. Okay, Chris, that's not the answer I was expecting you to say, but that's true. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning and the assets under management that you're getting paid on every year, whether you do anything or not, but actually investing your money? How many of the guys you know in your office that can do that? And there's about 100 people in our office, and some of them have been working there since the late 1970s. I said, well, none of them are. There's your problem, Chris. Well, over the ensuing months, I eventually quit being a financial advisor because I couldn't stay in integrity, keep teaching something that I knew wasn't working, right? I couldn't do it. And so, as time went on, as months went on, as I started to learn about these kind of strategies I'm talking about today, as I got my money working harder for me, guess what? I didn't have to work so hard for money, even to the point where, by the way, I only needed 3,500 a month to live on, so it wasn't hard to get there. But later that next year, I was able to retire when I was 28 years old. Now, if you know my whole story, eventually like 2008, that the recession hit, I lost everything, almost everything. I didn't go bankrupt, but I pretty much had to start from zero again, or less than zero, $1 million in debt, was able to dig back out of it. And I'll tell you, during that 2008 time, I was actually mentoring people how to get out of the rat race. I couldn't do it anymore because I was back in it. But I'll tell you this, though. I knew in the back of my mind that if I could do it a second time, if I could actually make this work twice in my life, wouldn't that be a testament that this stuff actually works as opposed to just getting lucky? Which I'll tell you honestly, I kind of thought in 2006 when I retired that maybe I was just lucky. But when I was able to do it again by 2016, by December of 2016, I can tell you this is not luck. It's formulaic. You can actually make it work in your life. It does require some patience. It's not get rich quick overnight. I'll tell you that much, but it does work. But here's the challenges you're dealing with, right? We got, guys like Dave Ramsey telling you to save $100 a month, and for 40 years, you'll have $1.176 million, right? Here's the problem. He assumes 12% rate in the market. When did it actually earn 12%? Also, even if you do put in 12% in the calculator, look at this. He's off by $200,000. So even Dave Ramsey can't do math, right? And he keeps reposting those same numbers over and over as if he doesn't know. This is the problem with talking heads out there. You got to be careful. They will sell you crap because they don't have to be held accountable. They can say whatever they want to, and they'll still get paid by you, and they have no accountability for it. That's just not cool. That's why he's not a financial advisor. He has no licenses. You can't really sue him. He's a TV personality. He's a radio personality that you can't take seriously, and you shouldn't. By the way, what if you only here's the real stock market return has been 8.4% in the last 30 years. Well, what if you only got 8% after fees, which is actually better than what most people get? Guess what? You end up with about $1/3 of $1 million, not 1.176 million. So you're about a quarter of what you expected, or a third maybe of what you expected. That's not even close to what you thought you would have, is it? And that's not much to live on, especially after inflation, is it? The problem is this, that you have people who have been following his advice. You can see like Michelle right here, if you can read that, says like, hey, I followed your advice since I was 18 years old. I've lost everything. And so what do I do now? The problem is she's asking the very guy that gave her bad advice for more advice. Guys, this is how hungry you are for something decent and good. The problem is we're going to the wrong people giving us the bad advice. Don't go there. Don't follow these kind of personalities, especially when we have inflation that we're fighting. We're fighting the government who wants to tax you more. And of course, your 401k and IRAs are targets for that. And even worse, guys, this is not just about you. This is what kind of legacy are you trying to leave behind for your children? Think about that. What is the legacy you want to leave behind? Do you want to leave behind a life where you, again, nothing against working hard. I think you should work hard, but it's not even about trying to work smarter. It's about working right. Do you want them to work right or just work hard? Ideally, hopefully you want to work right. If you want to teach them to work harder, put that in the comments here. If you're like, I'm about making them work right and doing it the right way and having them have some hope for the future, and maybe they can even have a better life than me. If you're that kind of caring parent that wants to leave a better legacy behind than what you have created in your own life, please, type that in the notes and let me know if you're on that same page. If not, don't be that person. But if you're all about the legacy like I am, where you want them to have a leg up, not entitled brats, right? But really like they learn those principles first, including the good principles that you've been trying to teach them already, and then the principles of money that helps them create real wealth, and then they could do it faster than you because they started younger and earlier. That is the kind of thing that hopefully that's the kind of legacy you want to leave behind. If you're with me, definitely type yes. And if you're lazy, just work, do why. Ryan, I appreciate it. Work smart, And even better, you can work right? Definitely work smarter for sure. So here's the key, guys. It's all about the cash flow. It's all about the income, not about the accumulation of the money. We've been taught forever. We're supposed to tie up our money forever, but it's about cash flow. How much more money do you have every month compared to what you're spending without having to live on rice and beans your whole life is the key to freedom. Now, I'm here to tell you anybody can do this, right? This is something that anyone can actually do. But I'm going to say this. I want to talk about right now who's this not for. Brett, I appreciate you being on board. Michael and Victoria, too. Jody, thank you. Lacey is key. But who's this not for? I will tell you this. This is not for somebody who thinks they can just gamble their way to wealth. If you're like someone who says, if I just buy a bunch of Bitcoin, I'm going to get rich. If I just buy that right stock at the right time or that, just get lucky, this is not for you. Gamblers violate principles. It does not take high risk, create high returns. If that were the case, you're a lottery winner. And those lottery winners, you already know what happens to them. They lose all their money. This is not for somebody who thinks that you can just do nothing. Okay. This is not literally being passive where you do jack squat. This does require you to get educated. As part of that principle thing, you need to be educated. You need to understand this and have the right perspective so that it's actually easier to make the strategies work for you. If you don't have the right perspective, you'll take the wrong actions. That'll get you the bad results. This is also not for somebody who thinks that you don't have to have any money. I'll tell you this, if you want true passive income, it actually requires you to have money. I know that's not a popular thing, but it's true. If you don't have money, you won't have money to make money for you, right? Because if you don't have money, you're gonna have to use labor and value and do things. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. You have your job, your business, whatever it is, that should be your economic engine to build more cash so that you can save it to then use it to generate multiple streams of passive income in things that actually really are passive. But don't let anyone tell you for 1 second that you can do nothing and get paid something. That is a violation of the law of the harvest, right? You got to give in order to receive, don't you? And so make sure you follow that principle. But you can give money and create leverage. Now, if you don't have money, if you're like, Chris, I don't have hardly anything, I'd say if you don't have at least 100,000 plus, really, I wouldn't even be worried about this. And that's what I'm going to say. There's still hope. One is that, especially if you're a business owner, by the way, you get extra bonus on this. But we do have a cash flow secrets course on our website, moneyripples.com. You go there, there's a cash flow secrets course that we actually teach you how to find and free up cash so you can actually put some money away to save. That would be your best next step if you're in the place where you don't have the cash right now. Learn about these investments are great, and you're going to learn about passive investments here, but just know you won't be able to act upon it. And so if you want to act upon something to get results for yourself, definitely check out that cash flow secrets course on moneyripples.com. Now, if you've got money, here's the thing. This is what Warren Buffett said. If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. This is why we need these multiple streams of passive income. And it's going to require you taking the red pill, right? The matrix red pill. It requires you to have a very different perspective. Now, let's blow up one of these islands because everybody's been telling you that the only way to invest really has been the stock market, hasn't it? Now, you'll hear about real estate investing, but it seems like that's something that people do when they almost want like a part-time job. Because a lot of those guys that are calling themselves real estate investors are really real estate job owners, aren't they? They spend a lot of time and effort doing real estate, and that's fine. They can make good money in that. But for most of us, we're taught to just simply put our money in the stock market. Well, let's see how that really compares, right? Because you get all these charts, like here's the Ibbotson chart. I used to show people as a financial advisor telling you, hey, real estate's horrible. Here's the chart I'll show you. Like, look, the stock market, just put your dollar in there. You'll make way more money there than anything. But let me show you reality. So 6 years ago, I bought this property in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, this property's been great. It's been awesome. Yeah, there's been a few costs here and there, but it hasn't been that much at all. But this one cost me $32,000 down payment. Now, the stock market over the same period of time averaged 12%. It did better than the 8% average. The 7 to 8% is more the long-term average of the stock market. But because of 2020 and the inflation and everything else, it's driven the market higher. We're at all-time highs right now as a result of this, right? Well, 12% average has been what you've had. So if you take that same $32,000 down payment I put on that property and you put in the stock market, you would have $65,000 today. You would made just over 100% rate of return. You would have doubled your money in 6 years. That's not bad, guys. That's actually a pretty good return. That's better than the average stock market returns right now. 12%, by the way, is not average for the stock market, nor has it ever been long-term. That is a lie. Every time you hear that, that is a freaking lie. And I learned that, sadly, first when I was a financial advisor, but I didn't want to have to tell people that because I was literally being paid on people believing the stock market was the best place to be. I've since taken that red pill and realized that was a bunch of crap. It's not the case. The market is mediocre returns with high risk. Now that same 32,000 in that Memphis property, guess what I've made? Almost $160,000. Not 65. I've made almost $100,000 more than I would have put that money in the stock market. But here's that, even if that weren't the case, but here's what really it matters. Because in the stock market, if you're going to pull out money, they used to say the 4% rule, but they've since debunked that. The 4% rule that you can pull off 4% of your money forever and not run out of money from retirement, that one's been debunked. It's 3% now. So if you pull off 3% of 65,000, guess what you have? 1950 a year. If you can see that past my little screen, my picture there. Hi, by the way, if you might be seeing my face occasionally. 1950 a year is what you could pull off from the stock market. That's per year. Not exactly exciting. But guess what? I just got an email recently from my property manager that says we are now, because their lease is coming up for renewal for the 6th year now. It's like, hey, we're going to raise the rent a little bit more, just 5%. Now I'm going to be making $97.20 per year. Let me ask you guys, type in which number you prefer. Do you want 1950 a year or 97.20 a year? Oh, by the way, that 1950 per year you get from the stock market, guess how many tax advantages you get? Zero. You get zero tax advantages from the stock market. Even if you say, well, I put in a 401k or an IRA. Yeah, but guess what? You still have to pay taxes someday. What if I have a Roth IRA? Okay, great. You used after tax dollars. But that's the one exception. But you have to wait till you're at least 59 and a half to get it. For me, 97.20, that's actually tax advantage because of the depreciation and everything else I can do. I paid little to no tax on that money. Imagine now if I had not just one of those properties, 10 of those properties. Now I'm at 97,000 a year. Now it would have taken me 6 years to get there. Remember, I said this is not overnight, get rich quick. It would have taken me 6 years. And again, results are not guaranteed. I have very different. I have ones that done better than this. I have some that have done worse than this, right? So don't think for 1 second that this is always going to be the case. You're always going to make X amount of dollars. Yes, there could be unexpected expenses that arise. Sometimes rental, and by the way, we're not just talking about rentals today, just so you know. I'm just giving you one example, an easy one for people to understand that real estate can kick the crap out of the stock market all day long, which is why if you look up that there's about 25 million millionaires in the United States, one thing they all have in common, besides, they might have decent money, but the one thing they all have in common is they all tend to have real estate in their portfolio. Not all of them have stocks though. So that's key. Now, real return on the stock market, like I said, is about 8.4%. And that's actually amazing. I've been tracking this for years, almost like on a monthly basis. 8.4 is one of the highest I've ever seen right now because we're at an all-time high where 1994 was actually at a market bottom. So we're going from a bottom to a height of the market. It's great timing, but that's not always the case, okay? Now, saving a 401k, that's the thing you're taught to do. It's brainless. Let's talk about those stats with Fidelity. Fidelity has 45 million account holders with 401k and IRAs, by the way. 810,000 of those 45 million have 1 million or more. Even after saving for decades, only 1 million, there's only 810,000 have at least $1 million. That's 1.8%, guys. And then Transamerica did a poll last fall that said, how many of you, what level of freedom are you at? 35% of that 1.8% said it will take a quote miracle to be able to retire because they realize that living on 3% of $1 million is only 30,000 a year, guys. 30,000 a year. Most people cannot live on that very well unless they're single, right? Or they have other streams of income coming in outside of that. That's usually where people find the exception. Now, I know there'll be some European who'll watch this later saying, well, you guys are spoiled in America. We can do it on 3,000 a month. Good job. I'm glad. But for most of us, that's, even if we could, and actually that's not even 3,000 a month, that's 30,000 a year. That's 2,500 a month. Most of us don't want to live on that. And especially if you have to pay taxes on that 401k, that 2,500 a month maybe gets whittled down to $2,000 a month that you're really living on. I don't know of anybody that gets excited about 2,000 a month after being a millionaire. This is why many people think it'll be a miracle. Think about it. Only 1% of people think they even have a hope of retirement. 1% out of 100%, 1% thinks they'll actually do it. This is like having a 1-star review, right? 99 people give you a 1-star review, and then only your mom gives you that 5-star review, and then somehow you think that restaurant's going to be a good place to eat. Come on, guys. That's not the case. But we buy into a hook, line, and sinker, believing that somehow we buy into this really hopium, right? We hope that we're going to have more, but someday there really hasn't been proven that this is ever going to work. And let's talk about the truth here. Some people say, well, I get 100% return at the match. No, you don't. Because here's the problem, guys, is that Fidelity also looked at their stats. I looked at their target date retirement funds. They averaged, guess what? When the market actually averaged over the last 10 years, right? The market averaged about 10%. Unfortunately, they did 2% worse. They did 8% average when the market did 10. So they're 2% worse than the market average. And they have a 0.75% fees, at least, if not more than that, coming out of it. So think about it. You have almost 3% losing in fees. So even if the market could do 8%, even if you could do that well, guess what? You're making about 3% less. Well, what if you made 5.25%, even with the match? Notice I put 100% match going from 10,000. If you only got 8%, you have almost $3 million on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I gave you a 100% match for 40 years, but you only got 5.25% with the 100% match. Look, 2.7 million. You're actually almost 100,000 less than if you had actually just put your money in the market. That's how bad 401ks are. And then people still think it's going to be amazing, right? All right. So I'm moving on here because I want to get to the investment side of things. And I want to leave a little bit of time for questions here. Number one, is I always teach people to get lean, get liquid, and get out. This is this one of the key principles that I teach is get lean, get liquid, get out. Now I don't mean get lean, like this guy did. Although that's pretty dang good. But I do mean not getting skinny, like getting cheap, living on rice and beans, but getting lean in a way that you kind of look buff, right? Getting lean means that you prioritize where you spend your money, and then you capture the cash flow that you have, right? Now, I'll tell you, like I had one client that was actually a chiropractor in Michigan. With him, he was 63 years old, and for the previous 3 years, his profits have been going down in his business. He was getting more and more stressed. The guy was an amazing saver, but he was at the point where he couldn't save any more money. And as I looked at his situation, I said, "Wait a minute. If we can pay off, if we can actually refinance your mortgage, so refinance your mortgage, cash out some of that equity, use it to pay off some stuff." And in fact, and actually, no, I take that back, guys. I'm mixed up with another situation here. This was actually after the last recession. He didn't have much equity in his house at all. So here's what I said he could do. I said, listen, like you don't have enough equity to actually refinance your house, but you do have 500,000, a half a million sitting inside your IRA. What if you could cash out 100,000 of that, pay down your mortgage just enough to get it to refinance to lower your payments, and then also pay off a few of these other loans and debts that he had. They weren't like horrible debts, but they were enough. I said, if you do all of this, that 100,000 will actually free up $4,200 a month. And he said, Chris, but if I do that, how am I going to retire? Because remember, he had bought in with every financial advisors. You set and forget it. Don't touch that money. You let it compound until you're dead, right? So then you never enjoy it. And so he did that. Well, I told him, like, well, $100,000 to create $4,200 a month, that's $50,000 a year. $50,000 a year that you would free up, guaranteed. But how will I retire? Okay, isn't retirement cash flow? Yes. Okay, $50,000 less in expenses is like getting more cash flow, isn't it? And 100,000 making 50,000 a year is a 50% rate of return guaranteed because you're paying off debt in this case, right? Yeah, but how am I going to retire? Finally, I took his wife, say, honey, stop. Because it's always the wives, right? The women get it faster usually. She's like, this makes common sense here. Let's do it. Worst case, you have $400,000 you can still live in retirement with. So we did it. We freed up exactly the way we expected, $4,200 a month. By the way, we also, because he's a business owner and we like to do cash flow strategies to free up cash, saved him $10,000 a year with the accountant we referred him to. So he was saving $10,000 a year there. And here's what's crazy, guys. That's already $60,000 a year that he's freeing up, right? That's $5,000 a month for him. Can you imagine how much more happy this guy is when he shows up at his practice? A lot happier. So the funny thing is that the unexpected benefit is that because he was able to relax a little bit, not worry about money anymore, his patient conversion ratio went up. So he started making an extra $2,000, $3,000 a month. So about $30,000 or so a year of increased business income, all from, and of course he still had the $400,000 invest. That's $90,000 a year, guys. Plus he still had money to invest passively, all because we improved his cash flow situation. Many people will hire us as consultants to just help them, figure out where they can invest money, right? Like how can I, what are alternative investments that my money could be possibly going into? But what they don't expect sometimes is that often, especially if they're business owners, we can actually free up a lot of cash flow for people that sometimes makes it all worthwhile for them. And then the passive income they make is just gravy, right? So that's a great example of that right there. Just so you know, by the way, here's the next thing is get liquid. Did you know that Warren Buffett actually is now, I just looked it up today, just last week, they announced he increased his holdings, not from 167 billion, but the next quarter, $189 billion he has just sitting in cash, not doing anything. That man is liquid. It makes you wonder, why is he so liquid? And everybody's telling you to get all your dollars working for you so you don't lose to inflation. It's because Warren Buffett doesn't follow the masses. When you follow the masses, you are wrong. This is why we taught a lot of our clients to start building up cash reserves, still investing, but building up more cash because you do want to get liquid. Here are the sources that we look for when we work with our coaching clients. This is what we look for here, right? Number one, you have bank savings. And this is beyond just your emergency fund. You do want to have an emergency fund too, by the way. We want to have at least 6 to 12 months of expenses that are covered that we never ever want you to invest, right? We recommend you have at least that much sitting aside. If you're a business owner, you might need more in your business and at home too. Now, bank savings is an easy place to go that people have money sitting there. I had one client that had $900,000. He was an attorney in California, 900 grand sitting there doing nothing. It's like, man, could we do something? Even if you earn 10% return on that 900,000, that's $90,000 a year. He could be earning passively off that money and never touching the 900,000. Life insurance cash value. We get a lot of people that, of course, talk to us about infinite banking, find it there. Mutual funds. A lot of times people say, I've got these mutual funds. They're not really doing much anyways. Or maybe because right now the market's at all-time highs, maybe this is the time I should be getting my money out. And so we get asked that question all the time. It's like, Chris, what if I sold off my mutual funds? Well, you might get taxed for one. But two, yes, that money could be used to actually generate passive income where until now, you've been taught to never touch it, right? Set and forget it, let it sit there forever. Same thing with old 401ks and IRAs. Did you know you can actually, if it's an old 401k, if it's a current company that you're a part of, you can't do anything with it. It's locked up in prison forever until you either quit or get fired. I don't recommend either of the strategies. By the way, I do have a client that is now changing jobs. He knows he's got an opportunity because he has a 401k with his current business or his current job that he could be using that money to go somewhere else to be invested and earn better potential returns than he would just let it sit in the market. And potentially even take less risk because you can actually have a real asset backing up versus just gambling on some stock value. So old 401ks and the IRAs can actually become what's called self-directed, where you can actually roll it over into a self-directed and invest it wherever you want, with a few minor exceptions. You can actually invest in all these kind of strategies we're talking about today. Rental properties. I'll tell you, I had one client that actually had 600,000 of equity sitting in his rental property where he was only making $200 a month. And I told him, I said, Henry, listen, he's from California. I said, listen, if you sell this property and get that equity out, you can go invest it elsewhere east of, because anywhere in the western half of the United States is a horrible place to do real estate investing. I say, if you look out east, there are much better properties. You can create a lot more cash flow and they are cheaper properties. He's like, yeah, but Chris, it's my first rental. I don't want to lose it. In fact, my whole goal is to pay off that mortgage. And then my cash will go from $200 a month to $2,400 a month. And I said, well, that's good. But that 600,000, if that even paid you 10%, would make you 60,000 a year. That's 5,000 a month instead of 2,400 a month. And you could be making that today versus waiting 6 years to finally pay off your mortgage. Oh, but Chris, I don't know if I can do that. My wife really loves this property. 2 years later, he finally did it. He had 700,000 of equity. He rolled it into other properties like in Louisiana and just bought his 8th property. And he's now cash flowing, guys, over 100 grand a year. And this is only 1 year before he was supposed to have that property paid off to get to 2,400 a month. But he's now making over 100 grand a year with those same properties with that equity. Guys, this is all about how do you maximize the money you have. It's not about how much money you have. It's how hard it's working for you to generate that kind of income. That's what's essential. I'll tell you, this guy is much happier today than he was 5 years ago when we were talking about this. Home equity. Although it's a little bit expensive to tap in your home equity, that could be a potential resource for you. There are ways you can even get to your home equity that maybe you don't have to, necessarily get a high interest loan. We've even had some clients. I had one client that retired to Mexico, to Cabo San Lucas. They retired there because they were able to take the equity from their home, invest it, and they still have a little part-time income they have on the side that they do virtually. But from all that stuff, they're able to live as an expat, and homeschool their kids and live the life they want now while they're younger versus waiting till they're in their 60s. Gold, silver, and crypto. That's another one. I just heard of a case yesterday that one of our consultants talked to, that they had a lot of money locked up in gold and silver and crypto. Now, those things could be good to diversify a little bit, but let's be honest, they pay you nothing in cash flow. What if you could liquidate those things to then buy something that actually pays you income? That could be a much better deal. Are you guys just checking in here? Because I know I haven't asked you an actual question that wasn't rhetorical. Just checking in. Are you guys getting something out of this? Have you already gotten some ideas about maybe your situation and what you could be doing? If so, just type Y or yes, whatever. If you're lazy, type Y like I do. or type yes. I just want to make sure you guys are on board so far. Hopefully, you're getting some ideas of ways you can actually get liquid. So then we can do the last thing, which is getting out. We talk about some passive income here. All right. Okay. So moving on. By the way, talking about getting liquid, I had a chiropractor in Colorado we worked with. Yes, we've worked with a lot of chiropractors and dentists and such. I told him, like, listen, if you sell off your condo, get the equity out, you can pay off 40,000 credit cards, freeing up 15,600 a year, and he actually would have some extra equity and cash to deal with that would help build his savings. Jody, I appreciate you saying, "Yep, you got some ideas. That's good." But yeah, by the way, I said don't include downsizing of his team members. I did tell him he had a lot of people working for him that weren't productive, that was costing them profits. They were working 80-hour weeks. Him and his wife both working 80 hours a week, all because they couldn't get it to work for them. They were just focusing purely on just being surrounded by people for one to make themselves feel better, and of course having that condo. Yeah, it was great to have a condo, but sell that crap off. And by the way, I love real estate, but we can sell it off to then generate more cash flow. It might make sense. John, appreciate you saying yes. You're on board too. Good. Now, where can you invest? And again, I'm not going to give you investment advice. I am not giving you any advice at all. I'm showing you a screenshot here of actually one of my partnerships I have in real estate, dealing with raw land. Actually, right now it's the cash flow is over 10,400 a month. My total in, by the way, into that has been $400,000. I'll talk about that in a second. Now, if you have less than 100,000, I mentioned this before, beyond just cash flow secrets, one strategy you should be looking at is the max ROI infinite banking that we talk about. And we got a lot of videos on our Money Ripples YouTube channel you can check out on this very subject. But this is a great place that you can diversify your savings so you're not just earning point nothing percent. Because just to give you a brief overview of this, guys, like not only is it tax-free now and later, kind of like a Roth IRA, you don't have the 59.5 rule. So this is money that you can put in, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free later, but you don't have to wait till retirement. But it's also this, guys, in most states, it's 100% protected from lawsuits and creditors. Even if you get sued, this is one of the only places you can put your money where they cannot touch it. They cannot get to it at all. Some states are the exception, like California, for example, where they can get to some of it. But still, this is one of the most protected places to have it. And it's safer than the bank because they fail a lot less often than banks do. And they have insurance companies that back them up in case they ever do go out of business, which is rare. But they have insurance companies that back them up to make sure that you don't lose your money or your death benefit, because this is a life insurance type policy strategy, and guarantee growth. Some of them are at least 2 or 3%, but most of them right now are paying at least 5 to 6% a year tax free, and it could act like a tax free supercharged savings account. You don't have those stupid limits and penalties you get sometimes when you have certain strategies like 401ks and IRAs or Roth IRAs. And you can even get some bank leverage, protects your family, of course, on the death benefit side, creates a legacy that can continue way beyond you, especially when you couple this with a good estate plan. Guys, you can actually become like the Rockefellers, where they were able to pass down their money generation to generation, and that wealth actually grows from generation to generation rather than having a bunch of trust fund babies that blow it all. So there's a lot of things you can do. And of course, the best thing is that you have access to cash today. This is why I use this as the bulk of my money that's sitting in just emergency savings. I keep it here. For example, my wife wants to keep about $400,000 liquid that we cannot touch, we cannot invest. Well, I don't want to keep that 400,000 in my credit union that's only paying me 0.1%. I would make 400 bucks a year and then I get taxed on that, making only like maybe 300 bucks a year after I pay taxes. But if I keep even just 300,000 of my money inside my life insurance, and then I use that, right? And I know Danielle just put in the comments, by the way, the YouTube channel that you can watch more videos on this. But 300,000, that's earning, let's say, even just 5%, even though it's paying more than that. I'll just go lowball. 5% a year on that 300,000, that's 15 grand a year tax-free. One less tax form I have to worry about. And then the other 100,000 is still in the bank that I can get to right away, where the life insurance might take me a week to get to it by the time it transfers to my bank. But still, I've got my money working way harder than it would just sitting in the stupid bank. So that's one huge way I use it. Not to mention, although I don't mention it here, but I do mention in my YouTube videos, you could actually get that money to pay you twice when you invest with it. And that's kind of tie in with these investments we're talking about here. But usually when I have people fund it, especially if we have less than 100,000, and by the way, even if you have more than 100,000, this is still a very great strategy to use along with your passive investing, because it actually allows you to earn money twice. Not to mention diversify your savings to earn more money on the money you have sitting around not invested anyways, right? Now, where do I invest? Here are really 7 different ideas. There's more than this, but these really sum up the vast majority of what our clients are looking at when they're looking at investing. Turnkey rentals. This is like my Memphis property. Understand that Memphis property, when I told you 9,700 a year of cash flow, that's net of fees and expenses. That's net of the mortgage payments with taxes, insurance. That's net of paying a property manager to do the work for me. That's net of everything. That's what I get to take home. So that 9,700 a year, yeah, that's a big deal, not to mention I get tax advantages with that too. Turnkey rentals are great because you have somebody else manage the property. You don't have to be there. It's not like buying your backyard. You can actually have somebody manage it for you. Now, do you still have to manage the property manager? I will tell you this. I would call this semi-passive. There are times that I've even had rentals, even recently, like in Alabama, where I had to step in because the property manager wasn't doing their job. And I had to step in and essentially fire them. And here's the crazy thing, guys. Even though we didn't make as much cash flow, we made about half the cash flow we expected on those properties. We were able to sell it for a lot more too. We still made like a 50% return in 4 years. Again, results may vary. It's not guaranteed or anything like that, right? But still, my two worst properties that I've had in the last really 6+ years still paid 50% return on my money. I'm happy with that. Okay. So that's an example of turnkey rentals. Lending, you can lend your money and become like the bank. Do you realize that there are investors out there that love to borrow money from private investors? Why? Because banks suck to deal with. That's why. Having to go through all the time and pain of trying to get a bank approval. It's not that they're not bankable. It's not that they can't get loans, but sometimes it's just easier, especially if they're going to charge them higher interest anyways. It's sometimes just easier to go get private money with people that they already know and trust, and vice versa. You know and trust them, and then you can just say, "Hey, listen, I'm looking for $200,000 to go on this property, and you'll be on title." So just like the bank, like when they give you a mortgage, if you fail to pay them, the bank will foreclose on you, right? If you don't pay them on your mortgage payment. Same thing here. You could do the same exact thing, and by the way, get paid 10+%. I even did lending on a particular deal that was 15%. I even had one friend reach out to me recently. He says, "Hey, Chris, I'm looking for $1 million. I'll pay 18% a year on that. I'll pay 1.5% a month to get that money because we got a big project to hit and it's going to make us a lot of money. We don't mind paying higher interest to get that money fast right now to make sure we can close on this deal." So I'm not saying you're going to get 18%. I'm not even saying you're going to get 10. There's some that only offer 6 or 7 or 8%, right? There's varying amounts that you can earn, but that's just one way to have, again, backed by real estate, protecting your money to a certain level, but also getting a great return. Fun. By the way, this is also why annuities, like people are like, "What about annuities?" Like, yeah, you can do an annuity, but in my mind, why? I could lend out my money and make more than the annuity would pay me anyways and get paid like an annuity. So that's my thing. Funds. I'm not talking about mutual funds here. I'm talking about sometimes people will pull together a lending fund. So if you don't want to just lend on one deal, what if you have it spread across many deals, right? Sometimes these funds might be like, I know one guy that actually does it as a debt to him. He'll pay a certain percentage based on the amount you put in, anywhere from 10 to 12%, but he's just taking that money and use it to renovate properties and do different stuff on, right? So he's actively using that money. He might even buy some apartments and then get paid cash flow on that. Speaking of which, apartments. Although you may not be able to afford an apartment, you can do what's called a syndication, where you pool your money with other investors to then have a percentage ownership in that property. So apartments are one thing you do. Self-storage is another thing you do as well. There are self-storage units, which can be recession resistant, because when people have to downsize, they start throwing their junk into storage units rather than keeping it in the house. That could be more expensive. Oil or mineral rights. I don't like to drill much, but I love getting paid on oil or natural gas. Anything that really gets pulled out of the ground, I can get paid royalties on that. Partnerships. That's like the one I mentioned with the raw land partnership I have. I put over 400,000 into it, but it's already cash flowing over 10,000 a year after 2.5 years of reinvesting those proceeds. That's reinvesting money to that 400,000. Again, no guarantees, right? But man, like, have partnerships like that, partnerships even in car washes. You can actually do syndications or partnerships in things like car washes or franchises. You can make money on those. Guys, you can invest in so many things that your financial advisor will never tell you about, nor do they want you to, because the truth is most of these things pay better than the stock market does, and you could have less risk if you're doing it right. That's a big deal, guys. And of course, and just so you know, as a financial advisor, even though I did it for 4 years, I didn't even know these things existed. So that's another reason. It may not be that he doesn't want you to know about it, but it might be they have no clue it's even out there. And if they try to invest in it, they might be restricted because of all the rules they have with their securities license. They may not be able to invest in these things themselves, and therefore will just tell you not to do it because, well, one, because they don't understand it, and or two, If you cash out your money from them and actually invest it somewhere else, they no longer get paid off your money for really doing nothing, but letting your money sit there in different accounts. They do jack squat. You could probably do it on your own and do it just as well, if not better. And I'm speaking from a guy that was a former financial advisor, right? So, anybody getting some good things so far? This is pretty awesome. Okay. So I already mentioned this guy. I'm just going to share a few client stories, and then I'll open up for questions here. But Louis, I had him on our podcast recently. He's actually getting really, really dang close. Now they've upped their numbers a little bit, but they actually are about on a 5-year plan. We're doing some growth strategies in their case. They're looking to do some things where they don't get paid today. They're not really looking for the cash flow today, but they're looking for the cash flow to pay later on some of the deals they're doing. And so they're like, hey, we got a 5-year retirement plan, and they're literally just about to turn 50, right? So looking to do that by their mid 50s. Have this woman right here. She had about 650,000, put it into different types of funds and in oil investments and things like that, paying her about 6,000 a month. She had recently, just this year, said that she's now out of the rat race. She is now work optional. She has enough money to pay her bills each and every month. How awesome would that be, right? By the way, even if you do keep working, you're probably not worried about taking time off, are you? This guy here is actually a rancher. We spent years working with him, and finally we're able to refinance the equity of his property, get that to work for him. And all in all, although he had 120,000 a year or 10,000 a month goal, he's crushing it right now. So now he's again work optional, even with his own business. This guy I had on my podcast, Dan here, same thing. Had $1 million. The financial advisor said you can live on 30,000 a year. He said no, thank you. Then he turned around and actually went and invested it, and now he's making anywhere from at least 100 to plus 1,000 a year doing that. Again, no guarantees, right? This person actually here, I didn't mention her about like the cash flow side of things, but we actually same thing. We actually saw their situation and said, hey, before we invest, even though that was their whole intention, we actually pay off some of these loans. We'll free up 3,800 a month with very little out of pocket. And then we found out, because they're a business owner, we're able to save them over 30,000 a year in taxes with the CPA we introduced them to. And then they sold off a rental that wasn't really cash flowing, but had equity. So we were able to sell that, and they were able to reinvest that money and make 2,000 a month off that. And they only sold off some of their stocks. They still have some of the stocks that they have right now. They haven't sold them all off. They're already at a couple 100,000 a year of passive income. Just so you know, I mean, if you want to actually get to 100,000 goal in 10 years, if that's your cash flow goal, you can do it in a mutual fund, but you got to better start saving about 235,000 a year to do that. That's kind of hard for people to try to save $250,000 a year to then live on 8,000 a month. If you get 10%, like what we talk about here, because a lot of our investments usually pay at least 10%, now you only need about 5,000 a month, over those years to be able to reinvest and create that income snowball, as I call it, income avalanche, right? If you're at 12%, it's even less, right? It just depends on what you're getting returns. I'm not saying you chase high returns, but man, look at the difference. Just a few percent can drastically change your life if you're, again, not just making the money, but you're making it work right. And that's the big picture, guys, that again, you understand these principles, you understand how it really all works together. Use your infinite banking, that max ROI where it's low cost infinite banking, not like the typical crap you see out there today. And then you use that with investments. You're constantly cycling the money through, reinvesting your cash flow and to reinvest again. You build that cash flow to reinvest. You keep creating this income avalanche. Rather than compounding interest, you compound income. You do that, you get there much faster. You create this exponential curve. That's how you do it in 10 years or less. Just really quick, I'll share a few more examples that one of our coaches shared with me today. I want to get some updates. We have one client here that's in the medical profession. She really wanted to go to work part-time and offset some of her wages that she's making. With 400,000 invested, she's making $35.83 a month currently with her investments right now. She's also using her IRA to self-direct it so that she can compound that and do something and earn double-digit returns on that money too. So that's one thing that she already, just in the first year, she's already got like over $3,500 a month coming in. Another one, she's a physician, and with her, it was interesting because she's already got her cash flow over $2,800 a month. But here's what's awesome, and she has a few other investments that are good too. But as a result of this, she was actually able to leave her job, right? Move to a new hospital with a better work-life balance, so she's happier. And now she's actually looking to do some more active real estate to get some additional tax advantages too. She's also apparently renting out her apartment in her backyard as well. So she's doing a few things, even things that we didn't have to introduce, but just were potential with her situation. Another guy in the food and beverage industry, he's an entrepreneur. Not only is he creating cash flow every single month. I think he's about 20,000. He also, yeah, in addition to 2,500 a month he's at currently, he's got some more potential still to go. Saving 20,000 a year in taxes already. So for him, just the tax savings alone was way more than he paid us in that regard. And so just examples like that, guys. I mean, no, not everybody's out of the rat race day one, right? Don't think this is get rich quick, because it never has been, never will be. But man, just think what an extra, even 2,000 a month. I mean, will that make your life better, right? Will that make it easier for you? That's the big thing. RK, I know you said the website isn't available. It's there. Moneyripples.com is there for sure. But guys, this is the big thing, right? Go to the website, moneyripples.com. There's a calculator right there on the main page. It's also in the notes here on the in the that you'll see. There's a direct link if you want to go there, right? Right from the clicking on the comment section, whatever you call it, right? The notes section here. You'll see that there that our podcast page is posted. But yeah, go to the calculator. You go take that to see if it's, especially if you have at least 150,000. I'll tell you, if you got at least 150,000, you could be investing. We probably should be working together, right? To see what are the best ways to diversify that, ways you could be using it more efficiently. Again, we're not investment advisors. We're not going to give you recommendations, but I'll tell you this much. We do know what kind of strategies work and how and where, right? What kind of things that can work. We even have our own network of people that I've invested with as well. Sometimes we introduce them to you guys and help make that more clear. So I'll just end with this, guys, is that I was doing a GPS. I was driving to the bank, literally to the bank. I was driving and I saw this, and once I saw it, I had to take a screenshot for you guys. Obviously, the bank should have been about 1 minute away. It was 0.2 miles away. But if I took the other route, notice it says it takes 24,855 days and 3 hours to get there. And I thought about how that really seems fitting, isn't it? I mean, not just the fact it's humorous. I've never seen that before on my maps. But the fact is, guys, that think about this, is that most people are taking that longer route, thinking that's the only way to get there, but not realizing you could take a shorter path. It doesn't mean that you get there tomorrow, although we have some people that could literally retire within a year, right? But that's not always the case. Often it takes years to really make this work. But if that could shave off decades, that could give you decades of your life back. What would that be worth? Because I'll tell you, with my dad, I mean, I became a financial advisor because I thought if I can just give him 1 year of his life back, that would be worth it, right? But think about this. There are people that are literally saving themselves decades of toil and work, losing out on their family, on that time they could be having with their family, all because they're taught to set it and forget it and let it sit there forever. Guys, you don't have to do that. That does not have to be your life or your reality at all. So here's the biggest thing, guys. I'll leave with this. And by the way, I'll answer maybe 1 or 2 questions, but that's it. Otherwise, I'm just going to tell you to visit the website. Follow our podcast. The Money Ripples podcast, by the way, is a great way too. But if you have questions, put them in fast, because it takes me a while to see them. But here's the big thing I'm going to end on, guys, is that the most dangerous risk of all is the risk of spending your life not doing what you want on the bet that you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later. Guys, my dad was hoping for the same thing, and he can't do all those things he can do anymore. He's actually about to turn 80 in just 2 weeks from now, right? Happy birthday, Dad. He's about to turn 80. He never even thought he would live that long, right? But that is the reality, right? Like, what if you can, again, have more of your life back, more time with your family that you wouldn't have had otherwise? And by the way, I've had clients even ask, I said, Chris, what if I, even though I'm on track to do it in 5 years, but what if I want to enjoy some of my money now? Do it. Maybe it takes you 7 years to get there. If you can enjoy that life now, because we don't know if we're going to be alive tomorrow. I hope I'm alive tomorrow, but you don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow, next year, or definitely not in the next few decades. What could your life be like if you can actually have that life of freedom today? And what kind of legacy can you pass on to your children, where they don't just see you working and your tail off and hating your job or your business or whatever it might be? And if you love it, just watching you work forever, but never really having a life. That's not living. That just because you make a living doesn't mean you make a life, guys. I'm here to help you guys figure out how you can truly make a life. So if we can support you any way possible, again, go to moneyripples.com. You've got cash you're wondering what to do with, especially in those liquid savings places. Check that out right away. Let's see if there's any questions here. We got one from Ryan. All right. So it says, how do you decide if it's the right time to cash out refi